My name is Emmett Lawson, and I'm 67 years old. I spent the better part of my life as a freight train engineer. 42 years of blowing whistles through fog, hauling cargo across the country, and watching cities blur past my windows like dreams I never chased. Retired now. Quiet town. Just me, my morning coffee, and the sound of birdsong that sometimes reminds me I'm still alive. I raised my only son, Braden, alone after his mother, Darlene, passed when he was just 7. Cancer didn't ask for permission. It never does. I held Braden's small hand at the funeral and promised him I'd give him everything I had. And I did. Every dime, every lesson, every heartbeat. I never remarried. I didn't want to confuse him. I didn't want to replace her. We lived in the same 3-bedroom house I built with my own 2 hands back in the 80s. Raised him there. Taught him how to fix a leaky faucet, how to shave, how to treat people right. Or so I thought. Braden was always sharp, always ambitious. But lately, he's been different. Since he married Claire, things shifted. I used to be dad. Now I'm just the old man in the back room. I overheard them last Tuesday night after dinner. I wasn't supposed to be awake, but the walls are thin and my ears, though aging, still catch whispers not meant for me. He's not going to last much longer anyway, Braden said. Claire chuckled. The house is worth at least $300,000. If we get it appraised, we can list it before Christmas. He'll be fine at Brookstone. They've got nurses. And bingo. Brookstone? That's a nursing home. And not a good one. They were planning to move me out. Behind my back, they thought the house was in Braden's name. He'd been pushing me to sign some papers years ago when my arthritis flared and my hands couldn't hold a pen without pain. But I never signed the deed over. I knew better than to trust blindly, even with my own son. Still, I stayed quiet. I acted like I didn't hear. I poured Claire her favorite morning coffee, French vanilla with that almond milk creamer she likes. I raked their leaves, took their dog, Murphy, on walks when they were too busy scrolling through their phones. I waited. I listened. And then I made a call to my old friend Seth Pennington, now a real estate lawyer in Raleigh. Seth, I said, remember that favor you owe me from '92 when I saved your brother from getting fired on that job site? He laughed. You're cashing it in, huh? I was. Within a week, the house was quietly listed under my name. Not Braden's, not Claire's, mine. Seth handled it all. The paperwork, the listing, the transfer, all quiet, all legal. Braden and Claire were too busy planning their baby shower to notice the for sale sign that never went up. They didn't notice the buyers who came by when they weren't home, or the final documents that slid under their noses disguised as delivery packages. Until today, Sunday, family brunch day, pancakes, bacon, my famous sweet potato hash. They came down the stairs arguing about nursery colors, mint green or powder blue. I was sipping my coffee at the kitchen island, pretending to read a newspaper I wasn't even flipping. That's when Claire's phone buzzed. She picked it up, read something, then looked at Braden with wide eyes. What's wrong? He asked. Her voice shook. Did you sell the house? Braden laughed. Don't be ridiculous. We own this place. I folded my paper, took a sip. No, I own this place. They both turned to me. What the hell are you talking about? Braden asked. I stood up slowly. Arthritis made my bones protest, but my spine was steel that morning. I never signed the deed over to you, son, I said. The house was never yours. His face drained of color. Claire's mouth dropped. You can't do that, she whispered. I already did. Braden slammed his mug down. Coffee spilled onto my crossword puzzle. Why would you do this to us? I looked him in the eyes I once wiped tears from, the same eyes that used to light up when I built Lego castles with him. Because you were about to throw me into a nursing home, I said quietly. Like a bag of garbage you don't want in the kitchen anymore. He blinked. Once. Twice. Then turned red. You're overreacting. We were just planning to cash in on the house I built. Just moving me into a place with no windows, just beds and beeping machines. I raised you better than this, Braden. There was a long, awful silence. Claire tried to speak, but nothing came out. I picked up my coat. The buyers are moving in next weekend, I said. You've got 6 days. Where will you go? Claire asked. I smiled gently. That's none of your business anymore. Then I walked toward the front door. But before I stepped out, I turned back and said, "Enjoy the sweet potato hash. It's the last meal I'll ever cook for either of you." And I left. I didn't go to a nursing home. I didn't go to a friend's couch. Where'd it go? Well, that part. That's going to surprise everyone, including Braden. I didn't walk far after I left that house. Just to the small hill overlooking the back porch, under the oak tree I planted when Braden was born. The tree had grown thick and proud, with roots that reached as deep into the earth as the memories that lived beneath it. I sat there on the bench I'd carved from scrap lumber decades ago, rubbing the worn initials, E+L, Emmett and Little Lawson. That bench had held birthday cakes, scraped knees, and long talks after hard school days. It wasn't just a tree. It wasn't just a bench. It was a witness. It saw everything. Every sleepless night I spent rocking Braden when he had the flu, every silent tear I wiped when he asked why Mommy couldn't come back, and every sacrifice I made so he wouldn't feel her absence swallow him whole. That house, that land wasn't just real estate. It was the only thing in the world that remembered how much I gave. But Braden, he forgot. He didn't always used to be that way. I remember the first time he said, "I love you, Dad," without me prompting him. He was 11, barefoot in the driveway, clutching a science fair trophy like it was Olympic gold. He won second place for a baking soda volcano. I built the model with him for 3 weekends straight. I didn't mind losing sleep. He hugged me hard and whispered, "I love you, Dad. You're the best." Those words stayed with me longer than any paycheck. But somewhere between high school and college, that version of Braden started to fade. He got his first job, customer support at a tech company, and moved out. Stopped calling as much. At first, I thought he was just busy. Life has a way of piling on distractions. Then Claire came. She was polite at first, pretty, smart, but something about her felt slippery, like oil over water. Smiles too perfect, laughter that didn't quite reach her eyes. She took to Braden fast, and just like that, I was no longer his home. I became the guest room down the hall. It started with small things, missing family dinners, forgetting my birthday one year, cutting our weekly check-ins down to monthly. Then came the day he asked about the deed. "Dad," he said one evening over lukewarm pizza, "it'd be easier if the house were in my name. For insurance, taxes, legal stuff." I looked at him carefully. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You mean easier for you?" I replied. He chuckled nervously. "It's not like that." But it was. I knew it, even back then. Still, I didn't fight. I nodded, told him I'd think about it. I never did. I kept the house in my name, quietly updated my will, even drafted a backup plan with Seth, just in case. Because somewhere in my gut, I knew the man I raised was drifting from the boy I loved. The week before the betrayal, I tried again. I sat Braden down, just the two of us. I even cooked his favorite meal, fried chicken with mashed potatoes and gravy, just like his mom used to make. We ate in silence, but I was hopeful. When he was done, I cleared my throat. "Son, do you ever think about what happens when I'm gone?" He paused, barely glancing up from his phone. "I mean, sure, you'll be taken care of." "No, Bray," I said. "I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about you. What kind of man are you going to be when you're the one doing the raising?" He looked at me like I'd just insulted him. "I've done everything right," he snapped. "I have a wife, a baby on the way, a job. You should be proud." "I am," I said slowly, "but I'm also afraid." "Of what?" "That you'll forget where you came from. That you'll trade loyalty for comfort. That when it gets inconvenient, you'll start pushing people out the door." He stood up then, tossing his napkin on the table. "You're overthinking things, Dad." "No," I said, locking eyes with him. "I'm watching things." He left the room. That was the last real conversation we had before I heard them whispering about Brookstone. I laughed bitterly to myself as I sat under the tree. Brookstone, the same nursing home my cousin begged me never to send Aunt Rosie to. He said the food tasted like cardboard. The nurses were always short-staffed, and the rooms smelled like mildew and forgotten prayers. That's where my son thought I belonged. So I sold the house. Not to hurt him, not to teach him a lesson, but to save myself. Because if the people you love start to treat you like a burden, you don't wait around to be discarded. You walk out with your dignity before they sell it behind your back. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. "Seth, closing complete. Funds deposited. You're officially no longer a homeowner. Or maybe you're now free. I looked at the tree one last time. At the house. The windows where Braden once drew smiley faces in the fog. The porch swing I built from scratch. Then I stood up. I had one last thing to do before I disappear from their lives. I walked down the hill, circled to the side yard, and knocked once on the guest house door. It creaked open. Inside stood Jolene, 65, my old friend from the railroad. Widowed 5 years ago. No children. Just her and her 2 golden retrievers. She smiled. So, did you tell them? I didn't have to. The money told them. She chuckled. I've got your bag packed. RV's gassed up. You sure about this? Never been more. She tossed me the keys. We were headed west. As I stepped into the RV, I looked back one last time at the life I was leaving behind and smiled. They thought they were getting rid of me, but what they didn't know was that I was just getting started. The wheels hummed beneath us as the RV rolled west, cutting through Carolina fog and broken expectations. I hadn't driven more than 100 miles in one stretch in years, but the open road gave me something I hadn't felt in a long, long time: peace. Jolene sat in the passenger seat with her feet on the dash, sipping sweet tea from a mason jar. Her dogs, Duke and Daisy, snored gently on the floor between us. The sun peeked through the trees, and for a moment, I forgot the sting of betrayal. I forgot the papers, the lies, the way Braden's eyes had turned cold. For the first time in what felt like forever, I remembered who I was. I hope you know, Jolene said softly, you're not running away. I glanced over at her. No, she said, resting her hand gently on mine. You're finally running toward something, toward yourself. We drove through Asheville, Nashville, and then Memphis. At every truck stop and roadside diner, I felt more invisible and yet more real than I had in years. No one knew me as Braden's dad or the old man with a pension. I was just Emmett, a man with a past and the courage to leave it behind. We stayed 2 nights at a peaceful little RV park in Arkansas. I sat by the fire, writing in a leather-bound journal Jolene gave me. She said it was time to put my life down in ink, not just for myself, but maybe for someone who might need it one day. I titled the first page, "The Things I Should Have Said Before They Tried to Erase Me." I wrote about raising Braden, about losing his mother to cancer when he was just 6, about all the birthday parties, the scraped knees, the sleepless nights, about the sacrifices I made silently so he could have the life I never did. And then I wrote about the silence, the kind that creeps into a house long after love has left it, the kind of silence Braden brought in when he stopped looking me in the eye. By the time we reached Amarillo, I got a call from a block number. I didn't answer. Then a voicemail came through. "Dad, it's Braden. I don't know what happened. I thought the house was ours. Claire she's losing it. Where are you? Just call me back." I deleted it. He didn't call to apologize. He called because something was wrong. Probably needed help. Maybe Claire was angry the house was gone. Maybe the inheritance she was already counting on evaporated in front of her. I didn't care. Not right now. Because something strange was happening. That night, Jolene and I stopped at a quiet stretch of desert outside Santa Fe. She pulled out a foldable table and set up a surprise. 2 plates of barbecue ribs, cornbread, and peach cobbler. We ate under a sky so clear, it looked like God had thrown 1,000 diamonds across velvet. "You know," she said, "I never had kids." I looked at her, surprised. "I thought you had a daughter." She shook her head. "That was my niece. She called me Mama Joe. Cancer took her 3 years ago." I went silent. The pain in her voice felt familiar. "Loss is strange," she continued. "It doesn't hit you like a slap. It creeps up, slow, like rot in the walls. And by the time you notice it, the foundation's cracked." I nodded. "Yeah, that's what it felt like with Braden." "You haven't lost him," she said. "He's just lost himself." I didn't know if she was right, but I hoped she was. The next morning, we stopped in a small New Mexico town. While Jolene picked up groceries, I wandered into a local cafe. It was quiet, dusty, warm. Just the kind of place I used to take Braden when he was little. There, I saw a bulletin board filled with photos. Families smiling, babies wrapped in blankets, couples holding hands in front of dusty barns. Real lives, real love, I pulled out my phone and stared at the last photo I took of Braden and me. Christmas 2 years ago. We were smiling, but it wasn't real. Even then, something had already broken. As I stepped back outside, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Dad, it's me. Look, I know you're mad, but this is getting out of hand. Claire's talking about suing you, saying you tricked us. Please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I listened this time. I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either, because suddenly it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about teaching him a lesson. It was about something bigger. That night, back in the RV, Jolene caught me staring at the voicemail icon on my phone. You think he's scared? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, but not about me. About what he lost. She sipped her tea and said, that's what happens when people confuse love with entitlement. I looked at her. You think he ever loved me? She didn't answer right away. Then finally, she said, yes. But I think somewhere along the way, he started believing your love would outlast his neglect. That hit me like a brick, because it was true. Braden didn't plan to hurt me. He just expected I'd never leave. We spent the next week volunteering at a retirement center in Arizona. Jolene had friends there, old railroad buddies, widows, vets. They welcomed us with open arms. For the first time in years, I felt useful again. I helped fix broken screen doors, read to blind veterans, and taught a few old men how to use smartphones. They laughed at my clumsy fingers, but thanked me anyway. One man, Roger, pulled me aside one evening and said, you've got good in you, Emmett. Don't let people who've forgotten your worth make you forget it too. That night, I added another entry to my journal. You are not just what your children see you as. You are everything you survived. A week later, I got another call, this time from Claire. Emmett, Braden is in the hospital. He collapsed at work. It's serious. Please, he's asking for you. I sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding. Did I still have anything left to give? The phone call lingered in my ears like a train whistle in the night, shrill, haunting, and impossible to ignore. Emmett, Braden is in the hospital. He collapsed at work. It's serious. Please, he's asking for you. Claire's voice trembled. Not from guilt, not from arrogance, but from genuine fear. Fear of losing him. Fear of the unknown. Maybe even fear of what I might say. I sat on the RV step for what felt like an hour, staring out at the desert. The sunset was bleeding across the horizon. Reds, oranges, purples, and it all felt so loud compared to the silence in my chest. Jolene sat next to me, quiet. He's your son, she finally whispered. Whatever else he's done, that doesn't change. I nodded, eyes still fixed on the dying son. I don't even know if I have anything left to give him. She reached over and took my hand. Then give him your presents. Not for him, for you. The flight back to North Carolina was long, stiff, and filled with memories I wasn't ready to revisit. Jolene offered to come, but I told her no. I had to do this alone. As the plane descended, the buildings, roads, and trees looked the same, but I didn't feel like the same man. Something had shifted in me. The man who left was broken, tossed aside. The man returning was weathered, yes, but stronger. When I walked into the hospital, I expected to feel anger, or maybe fear, but instead I felt calm. Claire was in the waiting room, sitting alone. No makeup, no designer bag, just a wrinkled sweater, a coffee cup in hand, and a hollow look in her eyes. Emmett, she whispered, standing slowly. He's in the ICU. It was his heart. I nodded, but didn't say anything. She hesitated. He's been asking for you. Nonstop. Still, I said nothing. Claire's voice cracked. Look, I was wrong. About everything. I thought the house was our future. I didn't realize it was the only thing holding you together. I didn't think you'd actually leave. That was your mistake, I said quietly. I'm not a ghost. I'm not a piece of furniture. I'm a man. Her eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't wait to see them fall. The hallway to ICU felt longer than the road from Arizona. Each step echoed with memories. Me holding Braden's hand after his tonsil surgery, me waiting while he had his wisdom teeth removed. Always me there, always me, waiting. But this time, I didn't know who I was walking toward. When I stepped into his room, I barely recognized him. Wires, tubes, monitors. His skin pale, his chest rising slow. The boy who once ran to me after school now lay like a fading photograph. His eyes flickered open. "Dad," he croaked. I sat in the chair beside his bed, my hands clasped. "I messed up," he whispered. I waited. I should have treated you better. I let her convince me. You were just in the way. I didn't respond. My silence pressed against him like a wall. "I was scared," he went on. "Scared of being like you, a man who gave everything and got nothing. And I ended up worse. I gave nothing and still lost everything." I swallowed hard. "You didn't lose everything, Brayden. You're still breathing." "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said. "No," I replied. "You don't." His eyes watered. But I continued, "That doesn't mean I won't give it." I didn't stay long. Just enough for him to know I came. Enough to let the ice begin to thaw. I walked out of the room, not with tears in my eyes, but with peace in my steps. Claire was waiting. "Can we talk?" I gave her a moment. She poured out an apology, so thick with shame, I almost didn't recognize the woman who once told me I was an obstacle. She admitted it all. Her resentment, her manipulation, her entitlement. She thought she was securing a future. She didn't realize she was stealing someone's fatherhood. "I'll never forgive myself," she said. "I'm not asking you to," I replied. "But I won't carry this bitterness with me either." "Where will you go?" she asked. "Home," I said. She looked confused. "But you sold the house." I smiled gently. Home was never that building. Home is wherever I find peace. 3 weeks later, Brayden was released. Weak, slower than before, but alive. He called me almost every other day after that. Just to talk. Not to ask for anything. Not to apologize again. Just to talk. It was like watching a broken bridge slowly rebuild, plank by plank. He told me he started therapy. Said he'd enrolled in a parenting course, even though he and Claire were childless. "I need to learn how to treat the people in my life," he said, "even if it's too late." I told him it was never too late. But I also didn't rush back. I didn't jump in to fix everything. I let him learn. I let him grow. I let him feel the weight of what he'd done. That was the hardest part of being a father, not rescuing him this time. Back in Arizona, Jolene wrapped me in a hug so long, I felt the ache in my spine fade. "You did the right thing," she said. "Maybe," I replied. But it wasn't for him. It was for me. I needed to look that boy in the eyes and see if there was any of the man I raised left in there. And was there. I smiled. Somewhere deep down, we spent the rest of the summer driving. Utah, Nevada, Montana. Every state felt like a new layer of healing. I met people who didn't care who I used to be. They just cared who I was now. One night, under a sky filled with stars, Jolene and I sat on a blanket outside the RV. "You ever gonna go back?" she asked. "Maybe. One day," I replied. "But not to stay. Just to visit. To see your son. To show him what surviving looks like." One morning in October, I got a letter, handwritten, from Brayden. "Dad, I don't know what to say anymore, except I miss you. Not just the house, not just the routine. I miss you. I miss the man who taught me to ride a bike, who cheered at my college graduation, who gave more than he ever received. I don't expect you to forget, but I hope someday we can start again. Not as father and son, but as two men who are learning. Love, Brayden." I sat with the letter for hours. Read it 10 times, folded it neatly, placed it in my journal. That evening, I added one last entry. A broken house can be sold. A broken heart can be mended. But a broken soul takes time. I'm not healed yet, but I'm not hurting anymore either. That weekend, Brayden called again. "Dad, Claire's pregnant. It's early, but we're hopeful." I didn't respond right away. "I want you to be in the baby's life," he said. "I want them to know the man I forgot to honor." I looked out the RV window. The horizon stretched endlessly. "Let me think about it," I said, "because forgiveness might come fast. But trust? That takes time." When I hung up the phone that night, the words echoed in my head. "Claire's pregnant. I want you in the baby's life. A grandfather." Funny how a single sentence can crack a man open. I leaned back in the RV's small booth, the desert wind whistling outside, and stared at nothing in particular. Not out of anger, not even sadness, just a sheer weight of memory. I had dreamed once of bouncing my grandchild on my knee, of Sunday cookouts, of sharing stories about the war, about the night their father was born, about love, faith, and how strong coffee should never be drunk after 8 p.m. But back then, I thought I'd be invited, not summoned. Jolene watched me from across the table. Her hands cradled her tea, waiting. She was never one to push, only to sit still enough that silence eventually made room for truth. "You gonna go?" she asked gently. I shrugged. "I don't know. Do you want to?" That question pierced deeper than any other. Did I want to? Part of me did. That aching, father-sized hole inside me wanted to hold that child, to redeem the years I lost with Braden by building something fresh, soft, and innocent with this new life. But the other part of me, the scarred one, was wary, tired, untrusting. What if they just use me again? I whispered. Jolene reached across the table, her fingers warm and strong. "Then you walk away again. But at least you'll know you tried." Weeks passed, and I didn't call him back. Not out of spite, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't returning as a rescuer, but as a man with boundaries. A man who'd found peace and wouldn't trade it for temporary affection. Braden sent texts, most of them short. "Doctor said it's a girl. Claire's doing well. We'd like you to come for the ultrasound if you're ready." Each one tugged at me, not enough to pack up and leave, but enough to plant seeds of reconsideration. Then, on a cool Tuesday morning, Jolene slid a small package across the table. "FedEx dropped this off," she said. It was a box, light and neat. No return address. Inside, I found a tiny baby onesie, white, embroidered with one word, "Grandpa." Taped to it was a note in Braden's handwriting. "I know you're afraid, but want her to grow up knowing where she came from. I want her to know you." That night, I sat alone under the stars, that onesie folded in my lap. The wind howled across the Arizona plains, but all I heard was my son's voice as a child, once asking, "Daddy, will you still love me if I make a mistake?" I'd said yes back then, and I meant it. I flew out 3 days later. Claire opened the door. She looked human, not the queen of silent wars and cutting glances, but a woman softened by time and pregnancy. "Emmett," she said, "thank you for coming." I gave her a stiff nod. Braden stood behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes hesitant like a boy waiting for a belt that wouldn't come. I didn't smile, didn't scowl either. I simply walked inside. The house had changed, warmer somehow. Photos of the two of them hung where only her mirrors used to be. A pair of pink baby shoes sat on a shelf next to a framed ultrasound. "We're trying," Braden said, catching me looking. "We're in counseling." I nodded again. They led me into the living room, sat me down, and offered tea. No grand speeches, no awkward silence, just presence. And for once, it was enough. The next day, they invited me to the ultrasound appointment. I hesitated. Hospitals were still fresh wounds, but I went. As the technician moved the probe over Claire's belly, the room filled with the sound of a tiny, galloping heartbeat. I stared at the screen. There she was, tiny, curled, real, my granddaughter. Braden leaned over. "We're naming her Amelia. After you." It took me a second to understand. "Amelia," I whispered. Claire added softly, "You were the strongest person in his life." We want her to carry that. Something broke inside me. Not painfully, but beautifully. Like a rusted chain finally snapping free. Over the next week, I stayed in a guest room. They didn't try to smother me with apologies or make up for lost time. They just let me be. One morning, Braden asked if I'd come help him set up the nursery. We built the crib together. He handed me tools without needing to ask. At one point, our arms brushed and he didn't flinch. We laughed when the crib instructions made no sense. We argued over the right way to install the baby monitor. But by the end of the day, the nursery was ready, painted in soft yellow, filled with sunlight. I stood at the doorway, watching him adjust a mobile over the crib. "You're going to do better than I did," I said. Braden turned. "Because you did it right the first time." Before I left, we sat outside under the porch light. "I'm not ready to move back," I told him. "But I'll visit. I'll call." "All right." Braden nodded. "That's more than I ever expected. And less than you ever deserved," I said. "I know," he whispered. "But I'm not looking backward anymore. Just forward." I shook his hand. Then I pulled him in for a hug. We stood there for a long time, two men finally meeting each other halfway. Back in Arizona, Jolene greeted me with open arms. She didn't ask how it went. She didn't have to. She saw in my face. I showed her a picture of the ultrasound. "She's beautiful," Jolene said. "She's hope," I replied. I spent most of my life building houses, not realizing the most fragile structures were the people inside them. But sometimes when the walls crumble, you find the foundation is still there. Forgiveness is hard. Trust is harder. But love always finds a way to return. I may have lost time, but I didn't lose everything. And that little girl, Amelia, she'll know her grandfather didn't stay gone. He just had to heal. I thought the hardest part would be going back. Turns out, the real test was figuring out where I belonged. Back in Arizona, the desert had begun to cool. Jolene and I would sit outside the RV at dusk, drinking sweet tea and watching the sun bleed into the horizon. Life was simple. Quiet mornings, roadside markets, lazy afternoons spent fixing the RV's engine or reading old Western novels. And still, every few days, a photo would arrive on my phone. Amelia's baby bump growing, Claire resting her hand on her belly, smiling faintly, Braden assembling a tiny rocking chair with frustration in his eyes and love on his face. Each image pulled at me, not with regret, but with longing. Then, one Thursday morning, Braden called again. "Dad, we want you to move here. Permanently. There's a little guest house behind our place. It's empty. We'd cover rent. You wouldn't owe us anything." I didn't speak right away. He added, "Claire and I talked about it. We want Amelia to grow up knowing you. Not just in pictures, not in stories. In person." I stared out at the Arizona plains. Jolene was hanging laundry nearby, humming softly to herself. "Braden," I said slowly, "I'm not the man I was when I left North Carolina. I built something out here, a new life, and someone helped me become that man." He was quiet for a beat. "Are you saying no?" "I'm saying it's not that simple." That night, I told Jolene everything. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just sat across from me with that steady warmth in her eyes. "I won't stand in your way, Emmett," she said. "But I need to know, do you want to go back? Or are you just afraid of staying?" That question cut deep. I stood up, paced the length of the RV, then said, "I don't know how to be in both places." Jolene walked over, took my hand, and said something I'll never forget. "You don't have to choose between love. You just have to choose where you'll water it." I flew back to North Carolina a week later, this time not as a visitor, but as a man weighing his options. The guest house behind Braden's home was small, cozy, a screened porch, a working fireplace, even a little garden in the back where Claire had started growing herbs. They had thought of everything. It didn't feel like a bribe. It felt like an open door. "Stay as long as you need," Braden said, handing me the keys. "Or don't. Just know it's yours if you want it." The next few days were a blur of new rhythms. Claire had me help with baby prep, folding clothes, sorting diapers, laughing when I accidentally called the bottle warmer a mini rice cooker. Braden and I went to the hardware store, argued over paint colors, and then got milkshakes just like we used to when he was 10. Every now and then, I'd catch Claire looking at me, not with suspicion, but with something close to admiration, or maybe gratitude, and still my heart tugged west. One night, while Braden was assembling a changing table, I stepped outside and called Jolene. "Hey," I said, "you free?" Her voice lit up. "For you? Always." We talked for an hour, about the baby, about the guest house, about the smell of pine trees after it rains in Carolina. She asked, "Do you feel like you're home?" I answered honestly. Parts of me do, but parts of me miss what we built together. Jolene didn't sigh. She didn't guilt trip me. She just said, "Then maybe it's time we stop living in two places." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've been looking at property in North Carolina. I found an old bookstore for sale in town. Needs fixing up, but I like a good project." "You'd move here?" I whispered. "For you? I move anywhere," she said. "But only if you want this. All of it." The idea felt insane, and yet it made perfect sense. Could I have my son and my second chance? Could we build something new without erasing what we had out west? The next day, I took Braden and Claire to the edge of town, to an empty building with dusty windows and a faded for sale sign. "Jolene wants to buy this place," I told them. She's willing to move here. Claire tilted her head. What kind of store is it? Bookstore, I said. Used to be called The Turning Page. Thought maybe we'd reopen it. Together. Braden looked stunned. You'd stay? If we make a life worth staying for, I said. We bought the bookstore 2 weeks later. Jolene arrived the following month, suitcase in hand, and a grin as wide as the Carolina sky. The moment Braden saw her, he walked over and hugged her. No hesitation, just welcome. Claire helped repaint the walls. Braden handled the shelves. I did most of the electrical repairs. We reopened The Turning Page under a new name, Lawson and Light. Customers started to trickle in. Retirees looking for mystery novels. Young couples shopping for baby books. College kids reading poetry in the back corner. The store became more than a business. It became a bridge between who I was and who I'd become. And then, finally, Amelia was born. I wasn't just in the waiting room. I was in the room. Claire held my hand while Braden helped deliver their daughter. When they placed that little girl in my arms, I wept. Not the quiet, respectable kind of crying. The real kind. The kind that carries decades of pain and hope and grace. Braden whispered, "We're giving her your last name, Dad." "Lawson?" I asked, stunned. He nodded. "Amelia Grace Lawson. She'll always know where she came from. They say a man is only as rich as the legacy he leaves behind. I used to think that meant money, land, maybe a name and a will. But now I know, legacy is love that outlives you. It's the hands you hold, the lives you shape, the forgiveness you give even when it's undeserved. I don't live in a mansion. I don't own much more than a bookstore, a beat-up RV, and a heart stitched back together by grace. But I've got a son who calls me dad again, a woman who chose me twice, and a granddaughter who will grow up never having to wonder if she was loved. That's more than enough. I thought the past was done with me. The truth is it waits quietly, patiently, until you build something worth shaking. It started on a Friday afternoon. The bookstore was humming softly. Claire was organizing the children's section. Jolene was stacking vintage cookbooks in the front window, and I was behind the counter pricing a donation of old classics. A peaceful day, a day that made you feel like you'd finally outrun the darkness. Then the bell above the door rang, and in walked a ghost. He had the same thick shoulders I remembered from the farm, the same heavy brow, the same way of standing like he owned the space. Time had added gray to his beard and a slight limp to his left leg, but I knew immediately. "Silas," I whispered, "my brother." We hadn't spoken in 30 years. Jolene looked up and froze, her eyes jumping between us. He grinned, slow and smug. "So it's true. You're still alive. What do you want?" I said. He looked around the store. "Nice place. Looks like you finally figured out how to run something right." That was a dig. A reminder of all the things I failed at when we were younger, running Dad's ranch, keeping Mom in the house after Dad passed, stopping Silas from selling off her land. "I don't want trouble," I said. "This isn't your fight." He laughed. "Funny, because that house you sold, the one in North Carolina, turns out my name was still on the original inheritance paperwork. You never fully transferred it." My heart stopped. "You're lying," I said. "Dad left it to me." "He did. But you never filed the quitclaim deed," Silas said, waving a folder. "Which means I still technically own a piece of it. And I just came from a lawyer who agrees." Jolene stepped forward. "If you're here for money, you're wasting your time. Emmett doesn't have anything to give you." Silas leaned in close. "You do now. You got a business. A family that finally talks to you. Grandkids. A pretty woman on your arm. Life's good. I want my share." That night, I sat on the porch of the guest house with Jolene, staring at the folder Silas had left. It was real, a clerical mistake, a technicality from decades ago, but one that could be used against me. "I never thought he'd come back," I muttered. Jolene took my hand. "He's not back because of you. He's back because he smells peace and wants to spoil it." I nodded. That's always been his gift. She looked me in the eyes. "So what now?" "I don't know," I said, "but I'm not letting him ruin what we built here." Braden wasn't happy when I told him. "You should have told me he existed," he said. "I thought it was safer for you not to know," I admitted. He wasn't just trouble back then. He was cruel, a gambler. He sold everything he could touch. Claire joined the conversation. "So what's he after?" "Money. I think he wants to embarrass me. Take something just to remind me he can. Braden folded his arms. Let me talk to him. No, I said firmly. This is my past. I'll handle it. The next day, I met Silas at a diner on the edge of town. He ordered a steak. Rare. I sipped my coffee. You always did play hero, he said, chewing loudly. Thought you were better than the rest of us. Thought love could fix everything. I stayed quiet. He leaned in. I want 50 grand. I laughed. I don't even have 10. Then sell the shop. Or the RV. You've got assets now. I know how this works. I shook my head. You're not getting a penny. Take it to court if you want. But all you'll win is a broken memory. He narrowed his eyes. You're forgetting I know the real you. The one who gave up on our mama when things got hard. The one who ran. I stood. I didn't run. I survived. There's a difference. That night, I called my lawyer friend, Chuck, a man I'd helped fix his porch for free months ago. He came over with legal documents and apple pie. You're lucky, Chuck said, because technically, while Silas was still on the inheritance chain, he never paid taxes on it. Never touched the property. No financial stake, no claim. A judge will laugh him out of the room. I exhaled deeply. Still, Chuck added, he might try to make noise. Call reporters. Embarrass you. I nodded. He already is. Chuck patted my shoulder. You want to get rid of him? Beat him the way you've beaten everything else. Outlive his bitterness. That's the kind of revenge he can't stomach. A week passed. Then two. Silas came back once to leave a nasty note on the shop door. But I didn't call the police. I didn't give him the fight he wanted. Instead, I wrote him a letter. Silas, I forgive you, but I won't feed your hunger anymore. The door to the past is closed. The man you remember is gone. You can chase ghosts, or you can build something real. The choice is yours. But I choose peace. Emmett. I never heard from him again. The bookstore grew. Claire gave birth. Jolene and I took turns rocking little Amelia to sleep. Braden brought home old board games we used to play when he was 12. Life didn't just return, it repaired. And I realized something one evening, sitting under a starlit Carolina sky. The people who try to destroy you often fail. Not because you fight harder, but because you grow beyond them. I didn't need to punish Silas. Watching me finally become the man he never could, that was punishment enough. It was quiet again, peaceful in a way that didn't feel fragile anymore. The storm had passed. My son Braden was no longer angry, just humbled. The bookstore was thriving. Claire and the baby had made our house their second home. And Jolene, God bless that woman. She stayed. She loved. She healed me. I was no longer a man trying to prove I still mattered. I knew I did. But as fall rolled in with its golden leaves and sharp air, I began to feel something stirring. Not regret, not fear. A simple question. What now? When you've lost everything and gotten a second chance, you don't take it for granted. But what do you do with it? That question hung over me for weeks. Until one day, a letter came in the mail from the local elementary school. They were holding a fall charity dinner. Funds were tight. Their heating system had broken down just before winter. The note was handwritten by one of the teachers, Miss Harper. I didn't know her personally, but I remembered fixing her father's shed 2 winters ago for free. I stared at the letter, feeling something tighten in my chest. It's time, I thought. That week, I got busy. I spoke to Jolene and Braden. We made phone calls, printed flyers, reached out to old customers and neighbors. The night of the dinner arrived. It wasn't fancy, just folding chairs, string lights, a few tables with plastic cloths. Parents brought crockpots full of stew and casseroles. Kids sold baked goods shaped like pumpkins and turkeys. But it was full. The room buzzed with warmth, joy, gratitude. I walked to the front. Braden was on one side of me, Jolene on the other, and I cleared my throat. Most of you know me, I began. My name's Emmett Lawson. I'm 67 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought my life was over. Some people chuckled, but I could see the curiosity in their faces. I lost a lot. Family, dignity, purpose. But I found something even better, clarity. The kind you only get when you hit the bottom and realize you're still breathing. I glanced at Braden. He lowered his eyes, but his hand found mine beneath the table. I came here tonight to do something I've never done before. Not just ask for help, but offer it. I pulled out an envelope. A few months ago, I sold a house that was never mine. Really, it belonged to my wife, then to my son, then to no one. But what I realized is this: houses don't build people. People build people. I handed the envelope to Ms. Harper. This should cover the heating system, and a little more. She opened it slowly, then gasped. Whispers moved through the crowd like wind and wind. $10,000. Most of what I had left. But it didn't hurt. It felt right. Afterward, people came to shake my hand. Kids hugged my leg. A few dad clapped my back so hard I thought I'd lose a rib. Braden stood beside me the whole time. Finally, when the crowd had thinned, he turned to me. "Dad, why didn't you tell me you were planning that?" I smiled. Because I wanted it to be mine. Not revenge. Not a comeback. Just a gift. Something clean. He nodded, blinking fast. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. That nearly brought me to my knees. A week later, Claire brought the baby to the bookstore for the first time since the dinner. Little Amelia was wrapped in a pumpkin-colored blanket. Her cheeks were like ripe apples, and her eyes already sparkled like Jolene's. I held her in my arms, sitting behind the same counter where I once questioned my worth. She reached out and touched my nose. I laughed, a full laugh, the kind that vibrated deep in my ribs. And it hit me, this is the legacy. Not the house, not the shop, not the money, but this moment, this love, this peace. Braden came by that evening to help restock shelves. We didn't talk much, just worked side by side. But as we finished, he cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said, "about how I treated you. I still don't forgive myself, but I hope you know I'm trying." I nodded. Trying is enough. Every day, it's enough. He turned to me. "There's one more thing." "What?" "I've been saving up. Claire and I, we want to buy the RV back. Fix it up. Travel a little. Maybe with you and Jolene." I blinked. "You want me to come?" "Of course," he said. "You're the reason we can. You're the reason we believe again." Months passed. The seasons changed. And one morning, Jolene and I stood in front of the bookstore, locking up for a week-long road trip. The RV was packed. Braden was double-checking the tires. Claire was inside with the baby, feeding her a banana. I looked back at the shop. It had once been a symbol of my survival. Now it was a monument to healing. Jolene slipped her hand into mine. "You ready?" I smiled. I've never been more ready in my life. And we drove off, sun rising behind us, family beside us, the past in the rear view, and the open road ahead.